Bakao was just searching for tape in the kitchen drawer. Nothing serious. She wasn't snooping or trying to find anything hidden, but as she pulled the drawer open, something unusual caught her eye. A letter. It looked personal. Her name wasn't on it, but curiosity got the better of her. The envelope was already slightly open. Inside, she found a folded paper with her husband Wikesa's handwriting. It was addressed to someone named Iria, and the words on top hit her like a slap. To my ex, the mistake of my youth. Bakao froze. She didn't even know he still talked to Iria, let alone wrote letters to her. But that wasn't what shocked her the most. Tucked inside the paper was a money order, a rent payment. Her hands began to shake. Why was Wekesa sending rent money to his ex? They lived in this house together. Wasn't it theirs now? She sat down slowly on the kitchen stool, the letter still in her hand. Her mind raced with questions. Was he secretly supporting Iria? Was the house they lived in even truly hers? Suddenly, everything felt strange. The walls, the floor, the roof above her head. Had she just walked into someone else's story without even knowing it? Bakao's heart sank, but she kept quiet. For now. From the first day she moved in, Bakao never truly felt at home. The house was beautiful, yes. Wekesa had told her she could decorate it however she wanted. She picked the curtains, chose the paint, arranged the furniture. But deep down, something felt off, like the house didn't fully belong to her. Every time she asked Wekesa about the house documents, he brushed it off with a smile. It's all being handled, he'd say. Just paperwork delays. But months passed, and still, there were no documents in her name, no official papers, no solid proof that the house was really theirs, or even his to give. Bakao started to notice small things. A key hidden in a vase that she didn't recognize. A locked drawer in the study that Wekesa never touched when she was around. And then, the letter. That letter changed everything. Now, with the money order to Iria still fresh in her memory, everything began to make more sense. What if the house wasn't Wekesa's anymore? What if it belonged to Iria, and she, Bakao, was just a guest pretending to be queen? The thought stung. She looked around at the walls she had painted with love, the flowers she had planted, the kitchen she cooked in. Was all this just someone else's leftovers? She started connecting the dots. Wekesa never let her meet any of his close friends from the past. He avoided questions about his financial troubles before their wedding, and he always changed the topic whenever she brought up house ownership. It began to feel like she was living in a house that had two women under one roof, one in memory, one in flesh. Maybe Iria wasn't there physically, but her presence lingered in the silence, in the hidden corners, in the way Wekesa held the keys to the past tightly in his fist. Bakao's chest felt heavy with confusion. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. All she could do was stand in the middle of the living room she had tried so hard to make her own, and ask herself one painful question. What if this home was never really hers to begin with? Bakao didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe there was a simple explanation for that letter. Maybe Wekesa was just helping his ex for the last time, but something in her heart didn't feel right. She couldn't sleep properly. Her thoughts kept going back to that money order and to Iria. So one morning, without telling Wekesa, she quietly made her way to the local housing authority office. She just wanted to confirm whose name the house was really under. That's all. Maybe it would give her peace of mind. She filled a form, gave the address, and waited. The lady behind the desk clicked through her computer. Her nails tapped slowly. Then she looked up and asked, "Are you Arya Bakao?" Bakao blinked. "No, I'm Bakao. Just Bakao." The lady frowned slightly and turned the screen. "Well, the system shows that the rent for this property is being paid monthly, right on time, under the name Iria Bakao." Bakao's mouth went dry. "Iria Bakao?" she repeated slowly. That was her last name, yes, but her first name wasn't Iria. It was too strange to be a coincidence. The woman nodded. "Yes, she's been paying since the title change years ago. Everything seems in order. No missed payments. You're saying you don't know her?" Bakao gave a weak smile and thanked her, pretending like it was a mistake, but her hands trembled as she stepped outside. The sun felt too bright, the air too heavy. What was going on? Why was Iria using her surname? Why was she still paying rent on the same house Bakao lived in? The house Wekesa said was theirs. The thought hit her like cold water. The rent never stopped, because the house was never Wekesa's to give. He hadn't taken full ownership. Maybe he never had it in the first place. Maybe he just moved her in and pretended it was his. hoping she wouldn't ask questions. But now everything was getting clearer. It was like standing in a house with invisible walls, walls built from secrets and lies. Bakao stood still on the street outside the housing office, clutching her bag like it could hold her together. There was no more denying it. She was living in a house where the rent wasn't paid by her husband, but by his ex. And worse, that ex now shared her name. It wasn't just strange, it was a message, one she had no choice but to understand. Bakao couldn't rest after what she found at the housing office. It was all too strange, the rent being paid under Iria's name, and her surname being used like a shadow behind everything. Something didn't add up, and Wakesa wasn't talking. So, quietly, without telling anyone, she hired someone, a local investigator, someone discreet, to find out where Iria was and what she was doing. A week later, the investigator called her back. "I found her," he said. Bakao's heart jumped. "She's not living in anything fancy," he added. "Just a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts. Not the kind of place someone with steady rent payments would choose, unless they had a reason." Bakao decided to go see it for herself. She waited until Wakesa left town for a business trip, then took a cab to the address the investigator gave her. When she reached, she stood across the street for a while, just watching. The building looked simple, old but clean, no signs of luxury, no flashy car, just a woman coming and going quietly, with a calm face and tired eyes. But that wasn't the shock. The real shock came when Bakao followed the woman to her workplace, a small corner clinic, just a few rooms, a waiting bench outside. Nothing impressive, but the name on the signboard above the door made her freeze. Bakao Wellness Center. Her name, her actual name, not Iria's, not Wakesa's. Heron Bakao stepped back, her mind spinning. Why would Iria be running a clinic under her name? How did she even get permission to do that? And what did this all mean? It was like the walls of her life were slowly being pulled apart. Iria wasn't living rich, but she was living quietly, with power. She controlled the house without living in it. She paid rent in Bakao's name. And now she was running a clinic using that same name too. This wasn't about money. This was about control. It was as if Iria had planted herself in every corner of Bakao's new life, without ever showing her face. A silent ghost, watching everything. Bakao felt her chest tighten. She wasn't angry yet. She was confused, deeply. What kind of game was this? What did Iria want from her? And why had Wakesa never mentioned any of this? She turned away slowly, her thoughts louder than the traffic around her. There was something big going on, and she had just stepped into the middle of it. Bakao knew she couldn't just go home and scream at Wakesa. He was too clever with his words, too good at twisting things around. She needed real answers, and the only person who seemed to have them was Iria. So Bakao did something bold. She called the clinic, pretending to be someone else. Using a fake name, she booked a lunch meeting with Iria. She said she wanted to donate to the clinic. Iria agreed, sounding polite and warm over the phone. But Bakao's hands were cold as ice when she arrived at the small cafe they had agreed on. She got there early, choosing a quiet table in the corner. She wore sunglasses and tied her scarf in a way she normally didn't, hoping Iria wouldn't recognize her right away. She kept practicing in her head what to say, how to ask, without showing her true face. Then Iria walked in, calm, graceful, and completely at ease. She spotted Bakao immediately. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight to her and sat down, placing her purse gently on the table. Before Bakao could even speak, Iria smiled and said, "You didn't think he gave you the house for free, did you?" Bakao's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't hide anymore. Iria had known all along. The fake name, the call, the disguise. None of it worked. Iria was already ahead of her. Bakao tried to act strong, but Iria's calm made her feel small. She stirred her tea slowly, taking her time, as if she wasn't sitting in front of her ex-husband's new wife, as if this wasn't strange at all. "I don't want a fight," Bakao said softly. "I just want the truth." Iria nodded. "You're living in my house, and I let it happen because Wekesa begged me. He said he needed to look stable, for you. I agreed, but under one condition, he would pay rent. I didn't do it for him. I did it for the power of knowing he'd pay to stay in a house that's no longer his." Bakao was speechless. Iria went on. "I even let him use the name on the clinic. Not for him, for me. I wanted to see how long it would take you to find out." She wasn't cruel. She wasn't loud, but her words hit hard. Bakao realized something at that table. Iria wasn't trying to ruin her. She was teaching a lesson, not just to Wekesa, but to her too. By the end of the lunch, Iria stood up and said, "Now you know. What you do next is up to you." And with that, she walked away, leaving Bakao at the table, her tea untouched, and her world completely changed. That night, Bakao couldn't hold it in any longer. After the lunch with Iria, her head was spinning. She waited until Wekesa came home, pretending to be normal. She served dinner, smiled lightly, and listened to him talk about his day. But inside, she was boiling. Once they were done eating, she looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I met Iria." Wekesa stopped mid-sentence. His fork froze in his hand. Slowly, he placed it down and stared at her. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he leaned back and sighed, like a man who had just been caught. "She told you everything?" he asked quietly. Bakao didn't blink. "Enough." He nodded slowly. Then he spoke, not with anger, but with a tired voice. A voice that knew there was no more hiding. "I gave her the house," he admitted. "A long time ago, when I was in trouble, deep financial trouble. I was scared they'd take everything from me. I couldn't let that happen, so I transferred the house to Iria's name." Bakao's hands tightened in her lap. "But why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "I didn't want to lose you," he said. "When we got married, I was still recovering. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could get it back somehow. So I asked Iria to pretend, just until I found a way." "Pretend," Bakao repeated. Wekesa nodded. "I told her to act like she was renting it to me. I'd pay her monthly and keep you believing the house was ours. It wasn't supposed to go this far." Bakao's eyes filled with disbelief. "And she agreed just like that?" He paused, then looked down. "No," he said. "She didn't agree because she cared. She agreed because she wanted to remind me what I lost. She said, 'I'll take your money every month, and I'll decide when it ends.'" Now it all made sense. Iria didn't want revenge. She wanted him to feel powerless. And he had been playing along, lying to Bakao, hiding behind rent payments and silence. "I never wanted to hurt you," Wekesa whispered. I messed up." Bakao stood quietly, not speaking for a while. The man she married had built their life on lies. He didn't trust her enough to tell her the truth. Instead, he let another woman control their home and her name. At that moment, Bakao knew this was no longer about just property or rent. This was about truth, respect, and everything in between. And the truth had finally come out. But it came with a twist she never expected. After Wekesa's confession, Bakao couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind running in circles. The truth was heavier than she thought. It wasn't just about lies or a house. It was about pride, about silence, about power. And the one who had the most control, without even raising her voice, was Iria. Bakao began connecting everything. The rent payments Wekesa was making weren't just random. The clinic under her name, the quiet lunch, the way Iria smiled but never begged. It all started to make sense. One morning, Bakao decided to go back to the bank where Wekesa's old loan records were kept. She knew someone there from her job in accounting. With a little help and some searching, she found something shocking. The money Wekesa had borrowed years ago, the one that almost ruined him, was the same money he used to start over and to marry her. He had used it for their wedding, their house, their new beginning. And now, all these years later, it was Iria who was being paid back, slowly, silently, through rent. It wasn't just a financial setup, it was a message. Iria wasn't punishing anyone. She was teaching Wekesa a lesson: humility, responsibility, consequences. He took, and now he was giving back, even if he didn't realize the full meaning. Bakao felt no hate for Iria. In fact, something strange started to grow inside her: respect. So she decided to meet her again. This time, not under a fake name, not with a disguise, and not in secret. They met at the same small cafe. This time, Bakao arrived with no fear, no anger. She sat across from Iria and said simply, "I know what you did, and I understand why." Iria looked at her calmly. "Then you know it wasn't just about him." Bakao nodded. "Yes, you weren't taking rent. You were collecting value for what he never returned." They sat in silence for a moment. Two women who had been connected by one man, but who now saw each other clearly, not as enemies, but as survivors. "I don't hate you," Bakao said. "In fact, I admire you. You did what most women never do. You didn't burn down the house. You made it into a mirror. Iria smiled softly, the kind of smile that hides years of pain and strength. And in that moment, something changed. Bakau was no longer just a tenant in a strange story. She was stepping into her own power. After her second meeting with Iria, Bakau didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't argue with Wekesa anymore. She just became quiet, the kind of quiet that means something is changing. She had seen the truth. She had felt the power shift, and now she was ready to take control. Bakau remembered the name of the lawyer Iria had mentioned during their lunch. It was a small detail, but she had held onto it. So she made a call, set an appointment, and walked into the lawyer's office the very next day, calm, confident, and focused. "I want the house," she said clearly. "I want it in my name." The lawyer raised an eyebrow, surprised. "It's owned by Iria," he replied. "I know," Bakau said, "but I've spoken to her. She's willing to sell, and I'm willing to buy. I have the documents. I have the money. I want it done quietly." The lawyer checked the papers. Everything was legal. Everything was possible. And within a few days, it was official. Bakau was now the owner of the house. The money she used? It came from the joint account she and Wekesa had set up after marriage, the one he had forgotten about, or maybe assumed she never touched. When Wekesa came home and found the envelope on the table, the one with the property transfer paper, his face turned pale. "What is this?" he asked. Bakau looked at him without flinching. "It's called ownership," she said softly. "You went behind my back," he shouted. "No," she replied. "You walked ahead without me. I just caught up." He stared at her, shocked, angry, confused, but mostly defeated. "You gave your past the house," she said. "You trusted Iria with everything because you were afraid of losing it. But you forgot to build a future with me. You left me in a place that was never mine, so I made it mine." Wekesa didn't know what to say. He had lost control, not just of the house, but of the woman who once waited for him to lead. Bakau didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply picked up her keys and walked into her room, in her house. That night, she slept peacefully for the first time in a long while, not because Wekesa finally told the truth, but because she had finally chosen herself. And now, everything, including the deed, said so. Wekesa thought things would settle down. He believed Bakau was still hurt, but not bold enough to act. He kept walking through the house like nothing had changed. But one morning, while sipping his tea on the veranda, a white envelope arrived. It had no stamp, just a name printed neatly on the front. Wekesa Olunga. He opened it lazily until his eyes froze. It was an eviction notice. His hands started to shake. "What nonsense is this?" he whispered, reading it again and again. The notice clearly stated that his lease on the property had expired and the owner had chosen not to renew it. He laughed at first, thinking it was a mistake, until he reached the signature at the bottom. Property owner, Mrs. Bakau Olunga. He rushed inside and found Bakau folding laundry like it was just another day. "What is this?" he barked, throwing the letter on the bed. She looked at it and nodded. "That's your official notice." "From you," he snapped. "You're evicting me." Bakau shook her head. Number Iria did. He blinked in confusion. "What?" Iria's name was still on the title. "She had the right to evict you once your lease ended," Bakau said calmly. "And she did, because I bought the house from her last week. Legally, fully." Wekesa's face turned white. "You bought it?" She nodded. "With our joint account. The one you said we didn't need to use. You never checked it, so I used it. Every transaction is recorded. It's all in my name now." He sat down slowly, like his legs couldn't carry him anymore. "Why?" he whispered. Bakau looked at him with no anger, only clarity. "Because you lied to me. You built a life with me on a secret. You let another woman control our home, and you never thought I'd do anything about it." Wekesa buried his face in his hands. Everything was falling apart, and fast. The house, the control, the pride, all gone. He remembered how confident he used to feel walking through the hallway, giving orders, feeling like the king of the castle. But now, he was just a tenant with no rights, being asked to leave by the very women he thought he had outsmarted. Bakau didn't gloat. She simply turned to leave the room. "You have 30 days, she said softly. "Please don't make it ugly." And just like that, Wekesa was left sitting on the bed, not as the owner, not as the husband in control, but as the man who never saw the storm coming until it swept everything away. Months passed. The house that once felt like a battlefield slowly changed. Bakao didn't leave it filled with pain. She didn't hold on to the anger. Instead, she transformed it. She turned it into something new. She opened the doors to women like her, women who had been lied to, used, or left in silence. She created a co-living space where they could heal, talk, and rebuild their lives. Some came with nothing but a small bag and a broken heart. Others came with dreams no one had listened to. But in that house, they found peace. The laughter returned to the halls, but this time it wasn't fake or forced. It was warm, honest, and strong. The kitchen became a place of shared stories and loud, happy cooking. The living room, a place of comfort, not secrets. And quietly, behind it all, Iria supported her. No press, no credit, just silent investment. A woman who had once been pushed aside, now choosing to lift others. She believed in what Bakao was building, not revenge, but recovery. Wekesa, on the other hand, had moved out long ago. He now lived in a small rented flat on the other side of town. Life had humbled him. No more suits, no more speeches, just quiet regret. Sometimes he would drive past the old street, slowly, like a stranger visiting his past. He would see the porch filled with women talking, laughing, helping each other carry groceries or hang clothes. It no longer looked like the house he once controlled. It looked like a home. He never stopped. He never called. He just drove by and watched. And Bakao? She didn't look back. One evening, she stood at the gate, watching the sun set behind the house. A few women were laughing on the steps. Music played faintly from inside. The lights glowed warm. She reached into her bag, pulled out the key, her own key, and locked the gate. No drama, no noise, just quiet power. Because not every fire burns things down. Some fires clear the way, so something better can grow. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded. You can lose everything and still come back stronger. Like, comment your thoughts and follow for more powerful stories that heal, inspire, and empower.